Hi everyone, I'm Saya and you're listening to the Stars in My Pocket podcast. Welcome to the first part of this month's Long Yak, where Paroma, Anisa and I talk about what we've been watching over the last month. In the hour ahead we're covering Misty, Mystery Queen, Shall We Kiss First and The Great Seducer, as well as a few recently completed and older shows. If you want, you can skip to the parts that interest you by using the timestamps in the show notes. And that's all from me for now. Enjoy the podcast. This is Saya.
Hi, this is Anisa.
And this is Paroma.
And we are here for our second Long Yak, which hopefully will be reasonably lengthed and not a really, really, really long yak, though we do enjoy those.
That was crazy, sorry guys.
But probably the most fun we've ever had.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
Okay, so the really, really hot drama right now is Misty, which I have watched half an hour of the first episode of. But Anisa, you're up to date with, right?
I am not up to date. I'm halfway through episode 6, actually, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about. So,
tell us about Misty.
Okay, so it's this really moody and very intense. It's like a 19+ drama, so it just, it discusses themes that we don't normally see in our regular rated 15 dramas. It's got Kim Namju as the heroine. She's like this really intelligent, very successful, very kind of ambitious and kind of ruthless TV anchor. And she has this news program that she's had it for like a few years, and she gets them high ratings. And it's kind of her, she has this younger Hubei that's trying to trip her up. And because of the way she's worked her whole life, like people don't really like her, because she doesn't really compromise on what she believes, and she's very, she does basically whatever she needs to get what she wants. And then she has a husband that she's estranged from. They have a very interesting relationship. And then there's, you find this out in the first episode, I think, but she's being questioned for a murder, as a murder witness / suspect. And kind of as you go through the drama, you kind of start seeing like flashbacks of like what's been going on and what got her to that moment and stuff. It's really well written.
It's a whodunit?
It's basically just about her. I would call her almost an anti-heroine. And I haven't gotten far enough in to tell you. It's very new. It's very interesting. Like a lot of times I'm watching her and I'm like, I don't really like anything you're doing. And yet you're so relatable, and like, oh my gosh, she is mesmerizing. Like, I've always liked Kim Namju, but she is mesmerizing in this role. Like, and it's not just that she's physically completely gorgeous and a really good actor, but she has this like incredible charisma, and like the character is written so interestingly. You don't know if you can trust anything she says, because she always seems sincere, but she never reveals her thoughts and like what she's really thinking to almost like anyone, not even her, like the closest people in her life. And like it's really, really, but it makes me so anxious and it's so good that I can only watch like an hour at a time, or like maybe in like half an episode, and then I'm just like, I think it's two things. One is that I'm scared of what's going to happen next because it stresses me out in a good way. And the other thing is that like I want to savor it because it's so good, and so I haven't really been able to watch it that quickly, but I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I heard that it was really, really twisty, and
it is.
I've also heard a lot about the trouser suits. Hi, Mary.
Oh my gosh, her pantsuits are amazing. Anything in her wardrobe, like I just want everything that she owns. She's, that there's like this very specific, gorgeous career woman type of fashion that is just like, like I would just have a job just so I could dress like that. Like I would work in an office just if I was able to like get that whole wardrobe and I didn't have to pay for it and I could wear it every day. It's so
But you know
beautiful.
what I realized now that we're talking about clothes, because I spent the last month just buying clothes, trying them and returning them, is that no matter how good they look on the screen, I will never look like that.
It's
Dress is
okay.
amazing.
I'm never gonna
I
actually
am
work
not
in an
a thing in
office
the
or have
dress.
that wardrobe, so but the fantasy is still enjoyable. Like that
I
red
think-
pantsuit that she wears is like so good.
It's aspirational, right? It's there.
Exactly.
You can hope for it. Answer something for me, because I tend to choose my dramas depending on what the relationships amongst the characters is like, and I've been trying to avoid spoiler tweets about this drama, but I still occasionally see a few. And
don't say anything because I'm going to watch this. Should I
okay,
take my headphones off?
no. Hopefully this is not a spoiler. But is this character married, or does she have a partner? Because I keep there are tweets about her romantic angle that keep popping
I
up.
feel like I've heard the name Kevin or something. Did I make that up?
There is a Kevin that is involved in the picture somewhere. She is married, but she's kind of estranged from her husband. That's not a spoiler. You find it out in the first episode. Their relationship is very interesting.
Okay.
I'm honestly I don't know what's gonna happen between them, but I'm rooting for him because he's he's just so earnest and sincere, and he wears these suits and he's so upstanding and he loves her so much.
So he's the earnest one and she's the twisty one. Okay, I already like this.
Yes,
that's good.
He is the female lead who loves the guy for years, and the guy never cares about her, and she's like, I'm here for you. I'm gonna make sure your dreams come true. I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you. And the guy's just whatever, I'm too cool for this. And it's kind of the reverse.
That's the reverse of first kiss.
Playful kiss, you mean?
Yeah, playful kiss. I'm sorry.
Yes,
that's exactly the reverse of playful kiss.
Oh, I hated that show so much. Okay.
There is one more thing I wanted to add about Misty, which is that when it was announced and the promos came out and stuff, I mean, with a name like that, you have no idea what it was about. I just wrote it off immediately. It's why would I watch something called Misty? You say Misty to me and I think Brooke, right? So
why
is
it called Misty?
I still don't know, 6 episodes in, why they called it Misty. Maybe because it's there's a fog of mysteriousness around what's actually what happened. And,
okay.
Yeah. Honestly, the only reason I cared was because I love Kim Namjoon so much. And so when I heard about it, I don't remember hearing the name, but I was just ooh, Kim Namjoon is doing a new drama. I'm going to watch this. And then I forgot about it. And then I saw a few people tweeting about how much they loved it, and I was okay.
Have you watched of hers before this?
So, I watched Queen of House, no, the sequel to Queen of Housewives, which was Queen of something. I don't remember the name of the sequel, but she was really good in that. And then she was in this family drama with it was just, she was this, career woman, successful, and she was really happy because her husband didn't have in-laws. And she didn't have to do all the, going to their house on holidays and cooking fritters until your hands fall off and doing all the dishes and doing all the memorial services and all that. And then she finds out that and then he suddenly finds because he was adopted and sent to the U.S. But then he reunites with his birth family, and they're living coincidentally across the hallway from each other in the same building. And she has parents-in-law, and she has all these siblings-in-law, and she's oh my god, I'm in hell now.
No, I totally relate.
And her husband is a perfect sweetheart. He's everything that you would want in an ideal husband. So she's well, I obviously can't leave him because he's perfect.
My husband got a family?
Yes,
is that the one?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, watch it for Kim Namjoon, watch it for the writing, watch it for the directing. The music is beautiful, it's beautifully filmed. Her husband is played by Ji Jin-hee, who is a statue made in man flesh, but he can actually act. He's so good. And he has these soulful eyes, and he just looks at her and he gives her these looks, and you're just my heart is a puddle on the floor.
I just looked him up. He's hot. Okay,
and he's a good actor too, and he's older than 25, which
I said this in the beginning, and you said because Paroma was convinced with just one look at him. He didn't need to do that. Slip a photo under her door.
And the other thing that I want to say is that it's really refreshing to see a heroine like this on television who is complicated, prickly, not very likable, but you can kind of understand her motivations in a weird way, an anti-heroine, which is what we never get. We never get complex female heroines. We always get the complex hero that we have to spend our whole time figuring out and understanding and trying to wrap our minds around and deciding whether he's worth redeeming or, this is what I really love. It feels really different for that reason. So yeah, watch it.
Watch it. I'm ready. I'm ready right now. Let's finish this podcast.
Alright, let's go. What's the next thing on our list?
No, I mean, I'm hanging up now.
Oh, okay. Bye.
But yeah, I kind of didn't get further because I was busy, like, with life and with Mother, which finished, so I guess we're moving on to Mother now. I don't know that I have a lot to say about it. It's one of those dramas that there's a lot to say, but I can't say it because it's kind of below the level of words. Everyone is amazing in it. Again, and like you're saying with Misty about how it's, you've got this complicated female character. Mother is a drama that is totally centered on women. And it's not just one complicated female character. Every one of those women, in every sort of stage of life, in every position of like in every relationship, like, as mothers, as daughters, as wives, as sisters, as criminals on the run, as abused young girls. There's like, imagine like a sort of like a diorama, and you have everything is in 3D in this drama. Every person is in 3D. Every character is their own fully realized person, and they dominate their own storyline. Like, you don't feel anyone is existing to support somebody else's storyline. They're all sort of, it's very real. And I think we talked a bit about it last time, the basic premise. Do we need to quickly go over it again? Lee Bo-young plays a scientist who had a not troubled past. She was abused as a child, and she was adopted by this actress, and she grew up, or at least her childhood was somewhat in the public eye, although that's not really that relevant. But what happens is, as she grows up, she becomes really deeply estranged from her adoptive mother, and she resolves never to become a mother herself. So for that woman to be driven to kidnapping, actually I don't like to use the word kidnap, I don't think that's quite accurate. I think in the sense of it being a legal term, it's accurate. But I think the question the drama sets up is the character's name is Sujin. Is Sujin a rescuer, or is she an abductor? And that's kind of the question that it continues to address throughout the drama, which I found a really interesting treatment of it. And it's hard to say much more without giving it away, but it does take quite a strong heart to watch it. And normally I think I would have had a hard time watching it. I don't know, I must have just been in the right mind space. Or once I start, it's kind of like, well, I'm in it now. So even if I want to get away, I can't.
Yeah.
Really? You can't DNF it? Like, if something gets hard to watch?
I only DNF stuff that I get bored by. Okay. Or if I don't feel motivated to pick up again. The thing with this show is that every week, not even every week, every episode, the cliffhangers were so sort of brutal that you were definitely coming back. You were not going to not come back.
I haven't seen the Korean version, but I found out with the Japanese version that it was so incredibly gripping and so good, and it was so brutal to watch, and yet, like, we couldn't stop watching it because we needed to know, like, if they were going to be okay, or, like, what was going to happen. Like, we just needed to, like, see it to the end of the story, even though it was rough. It was rough to watch.
I kind of I don't think we ought to do this, but I really want to know, because you've watched the original and I haven't, I want to know how they differ. And
yeah,
sure. The Japanese one is 11 episodes, and the Korean one is 16, so there's already more content in the Korean one. And I heard that the original writer was actually pretty pleased with the Korean version, and that it had been adapted to fit the Korean tone as well. Which makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'll ever have the strength to watch the original.
That's the thing, right? I'm curious about what that extra, 6 or 7 hours consisted of, but I'm not curious enough to really go through that again, But I'm sure maybe if some of our listeners have watched both, let us know what you thought, and if you thought it was different, and what ways it was different. We'd love to
Okay,
hear from you.
as someone who has watched neither but heard a lot about both, what makes it such a difficult watch? Like, can you guys give like non-spoilery outlines?
It's very emotionally challenging. It you have to witness things that shouldn't happen to human beings. That would, if they happen, they're things that break a human being apart, not physically, but like psychologically and emotionally.
Yeah.
And then you have to see them make choices about things that, again, no normal person should have to make a choice about, as no one with an ordinary experience of life should have to choose about. So it's kind of, it puts you in a position of having to watch people ask and answer the hardest questions.
And I think for me, what was very difficult is like how young that little girl is, and how unflinchingly we have to watch what she has to go through. Like the show is it's sympathetic in a way, but it's also very like, this is what happens.
Disturbing.
Yeah, and
it is
and you
so
see
disturbing.
It. Yeah, and you're like, I was also like, oh my god, this little actress, like poor thing. But also just seeing that and knowing that it happens in real life, and then and then you know, like even the little girl, she's kind of engaged in making those decisions herself too, which is, I think, usually in these kind of cases, it's like, oh, the state will just swoop in and take the child away, or like the child doesn't really have much of a choice.
But this drama is also about the system failing,
right?
Which is why the character has to do that in the first place.
Exactly. But then because the system has failed, they also have to kind of navigate what that means when the legal guardian and the guardian that's supposed to be there has kind of stepped out or decided not to take up their responsibility. Then the child has to decide what she wants to do when she shouldn't have to even answer that question. She shouldn't even have to think about that. But then like, you know, the main character has to make sure that she's okay with all this, which, you know, like, because otherwise it really would be kidnapping. So it's just, it's really...
Do they really focus on what the child wants? Like, does Lee Bo-young's character focus on the child's consent?
From what I remember, yeah.
In the Korean version, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and in the Japanese version as well.
It's kind of what makes it really, the kidnap is, that's why I don't call it kidnap. One, it's consensual, and two, it was a rescue, not a kidnap.
It's like running away from reality, because reality is so awful.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that reality eventually must catch up with you, and you cannot, escape from it.
And because Lee Bo-young's character, Sujin, because she'd been in exactly that, in an abusive situation herself as a child, you could, like, everything she did was so focused on the child. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about fulfilling something in herself. It was about, can I get this kid out alive?
Yeah, and if she was caring about herself, she wouldn't have even done it, because she's created a problem for herself by doing this too.
And like
throw away so much.
In the first or second episode, it's in the very first week of episodes anyway. She actually has to make that choice. Like, she thinks about, let me just forget about this and go. And she tries to leave, and then she can't. She comes back.
Yeah.
So it's a hard watch for all of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. But a worthwhile watch.
Especially,
right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to the next round. Shall we keep this to the M's and go to Mystery Queen, or shall we go to Radio Romance?
Let's do Mystery Queen.
Okay, Mystery Queen. Which, Paroma, you've watched the first season, but you haven't watched the second yet, right?
No, I haven't. I am really looking forward to it, though. Anisa, you watched the second season, right? Like, you started.
I have only watched the first week, so episodes 1 and 2 of season 2, and I recapped the first season, and I really loved the first season. Like, it's probably the favorite thing that I've recapped.
Okay, so answer.
Live Up to Your Name is my favorite, but after that, it's my second favorite. Go ahead.
Answer the burning question here. They left it at a really weird stage in the last season. So, is there hope for like a good conclusion in this one? Like, how does the first week look?
So, that question of his, ex-girlfriend or the girl that he's been waiting for, / the unsolved case of Solok's parents, who were murdered, I think it was like 17, 18 years ago. That, I think they're going to deal with it in this season because, like, a mysterious figure from the past resurfaces. We don't know if it's actually her or if it's somebody who's pretending to be her, but, like, she shows up. And then there's this unresolved semi-romance that we kind of had hints of in the last season, which it seems like there's definitely feelings on both sides, but they're, like, too awkward or too shy to talk about it, but it's still so it's there. I mean, like, she's definitely not going back to her ex-husband.
No, that side of the story is clearly over.
Was resolved.
But,
and you have the same, like, most of the same people. They're all still very charming. But the thing that I'm a little disappointed about is the director changed. And it's changed the tone of the show. And I'm sad to say not for the better.
Oh, damn it.
Because the directing was one of my favorite things about the first season. It was funny in a really, like, surprising way, and it was very low key but also, like, hilarious. The chemistry between the characters was really highlighted. There was a great soundtrack. It was kind of moody and whimsical, and this one just has, like, like the classic, rom-com background music with, like, one or two pop numbers, and then it's just, like, the directing is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. This doesn't have the personality of those, like, late night shots and the...
Oh,
just,
so
like,
the director of the first season was the healer director as well.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Well, I just know that he didn't come back.
That makes a lot of sense because at the time I had thought that there was a particular, I thought this fit a particular genre, just the tone and look of the drama, and healer came to mind. So I'm actually...
interesting. So, like, it's not bad. Like, the first two episodes are not bad, and it's, like, interesting, and you're getting back into it, but it just doesn't have the same... Like, I feel like Mystery Queen 2 really, it surpassed its genre. Like, it rose above what you would expect for that kind of procedural, kind of, quirky comedy / crime, which is kind of an interesting tone to begin with, but, like, because of the two leads, because it had such a likable cast, because the writing was interesting, and because of the directing, it just kind of took it up a notch. I'm not feeling that so far with this season. It's kind of disappointing, but I guess we'll see. I'm going to keep watching. I just haven't had time, but that was a little bit disappointing.
What about the way the characters are portrayed at this point? Like, is Yusolok still the way she was before? Like, are there any, strange new developments in her character? Because I really want her to stay the way she was before. She was a pretty unique character as a protagonist, and I don't want her character to go through,
no, like, so far she seems the same, which I like, and he also seems the same, but I feel like in the first season, one of the things I really liked about them was their dynamic, which was there was a lot of, like, bickering and, like, funny moments where they kind of butted heads, but not in an angry way, just kind of because they're so different, but they still appreciate each other, and they had a lot of honest conversations, and I hope that we don't sacrifice those moments of honest connection for the sake of comedy and to move the plot along, and I have a feeling that might happen, but I'm hoping not, because I found this was much more heavy on the comedic pratfalls kind of stuff and less on the, the character development and the moments in between characters. So I'm going to keep watching. Hopefully it doesn't go in that direction, but I will update you guys next time.
I have a question. Actually, it's not so much a question as a kind of just a comment, which is, when Mystery Queen 1, when it was airing last year, I watched about 6 episodes of it, but I found it really boring. The case that I was on, it was 3 episodes, and they were still dragging it out, and I was just like, please, just solve this crime already, because all the information
it's not really
was
about
there.
The crime.
Yeah,
it's not really about the crime. It's about the two of them finding that partnership and getting to know each other and finding out that they're exactly what each other needs. And for Solok's journey to, like, get out of that trapped environment where she doesn't feel like she can be herself with that family that she feels so much obligation for, but who are basically suffocating her. And it's about her journey, to doing that. And finding this guy who's, like, such a weird match for her, but at the same time, like her perfect, like, you know, it's like yin and yang. They just fit together so well, and they work together well too.
I didn't intend to drop it. It just kind of ended up backburnering, and then I heard that the end of that season didn't have it didn't resolve everything. So, and then there was a season 2, so I thought I'll wait it out, and then when it's finished, then I'll watch it. But it doesn't sound like season 2 has been worth waiting for. So,
well, honestly, I've only watched 2 episodes, so I also don't want to jump the gun and
when it finishes, tell me.
I will. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be done watching by the next Yak, and then
because maybe it's one of those things that if it's in marathon, maybe I'll enjoy it rather than watching it week to week.
So I'm reading a few comments here that are basically saying that episode 8 is reminiscent of the first season, and the writing is much tighter. So hey, that gives you hope.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely planning to get back to it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we move on?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to Radio Romance, which just finished, I think. Was it this week? I've lost track because I got so bored. I'm the only one watching this, right?
Yes.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I thought it was finishing last week. And then I was like, yeah, it's finishing. Gonna be done. And then I was so disappointed. Radio Romance committed so many sins. Firstly, it's very mediocre. It's not just that it's mediocre, it's kind of mediocre and a little bit old-fashioned. It's a kind of a rom-com that you would expect 5 years ago, not now. 5 years ago at the least. Like we talked about last month, we talked about, how the hero is different and stuff. But basically, I think this show has kind of sealed my ambivalence bordering on dislike of Kim So-yeon.
Oh no.
Why?
Because she's boring.
She's like 18. You can't write her off. Just
Don't do that.
No, but sometimes you see people's names and you're like, oh, I'm going to check that out because of them. I am not going to check it out because of her.
Okay. So unless she comes up with something brilliant.
Let me just quickly sort of describe her character. Last time we talked about I talked about how boring her character was in Master of the Mask, and it was because of the way that the character was written in that show. But in this show, I feel like her acting itself wasn't up to task because you could see her trying to, and I feel like I'm in a minority here, so I'm prepared for negative opinions of my opinion. So I don't think she's at a level where she shows romance effectively. Her chemistry, like romantic chemistry, she doesn't have any. She's really good at the other stuff, but she can't do romance.
But don't you think that's also the mistake of the casting director who cast her as, as acting as a 24-year-old opposite a 29-year-old man? I just think, when you were 18, would you be able to convincingly show a romance with, a 30-year-old guy? I don't think so.
Well, this is kind of, because we did talk about it last time, that's why I don't want to spend forever on it.
Sorry, we did talk about it.
But I feel like this role really revealed what she can't do. It showed her limits. And also, the mistake in the casting. But at the same time, the character wasn't written as interestingly. And I know, there are opinions that are kind of, they liked her character as it was. But for me, I feel like in order to enjoy a character or for a character to be effective, the character has to change. They cannot be the same at the end as they are at the beginning. Otherwise, what are you watching?
I generally agree, except with Forest of Secrets, I didn't have any issue with the heroine because I liked her being the same. But yeah, I generally agree with
Forest of Secrets is a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
In a rom-com. And you had, for example, Yundejun's character who was changing, and, he wasn't the same at the end as he was at the beginning, but she didn't move. She was a very static character, and then she had these acting tics that once I noticed them, I kept noticing them, and it just ruined the experience for me. I don't know if you guys know about... Okay, so Yoon Do-jun is giving her a look that is kind of I love you with his eyes, and she's just kind of chucking her chin a little at him or raising an eyebrow, and they're very particular tics. Like, she's trying to express an emotion more complex. Oh, did you?
Yeah, but it was there, like, from page turner. Well, anytime she's put in a romantic situation, she has a few go-to moves. So.
Right, exactly. But it showed up. See, I've never noticed it before, but it showed up in this. And again, I think that is it's the problem of having a grown, mature man next to a very young woman. Yeah. They didn't match. They didn't have any chemistry at all. I mean, it didn't work for me at all. And the other thing that I didn't like about Radio Romance was that they started off having these really... I was really fascinated by the world of radio. Like you guys were talking about as well, like Paroma, you said you used to listen to late night radio and stuff. I used to listen to the radio for years as a teenager. I haven't listened to it for years since, but like seeing how that worked was really fascinating to me. And even the idea that radio was scripted, I know it's naive, but it never occurred to me that it happened.
I have a weakness for the background of radio too. That's very... Sorry. I just was going to say, that's very cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And they showed a lot of it in the first half of the show. But by the second half, it had just, like... things kept going in circles. The plot was going in circles. It was 4 episodes longer than it needed to be. The conflicts were going in circles. And the resolutions were boring. The relationship was boring. Their feelings were boring. And it was just... I was bored. I forced myself to finish watching it because of, that whole sunk time fallacy thing. But, yeah...
So that's disappointing because I really wanted her first mature role to, be successful. It did do well on the ratings though, right?
It started out with like a 5 to 6 rating nationwide, and it ended up with 4 to 3 to 4. So it went down a little bit, but it generally remained around 5 for most of it. 3 to 5 for most of its run. So, but is it on a cable network though?
Is it?
No, it's KBS, so that's bad.
Yeah, it's KBS because I follow KBS on Instagram, and they keep showing me clips from Radio Romance, and weirdly the clips have been keeping me informed of what was going on. Like I didn't actually have to watch the show because they were showing the main scenes. Like in the last few weeks, I think. So the Yoon Park's character. Ikang, right? So his character, Yoon Park's character, I think confessed to Kim So-hyun's character, and she looked very blank. Like
she always looks blank.
That's exactly the thing. I was so surprised at that lack of reaction, and they showed the entire clip, and here was Yoon Park's character really bearing his heart out and asking if there was still a chance, or if he's too late, and she just looks blank. Like literally, she did not look surprised. She does not
blank all the time. So do you understand why she's boring to watch?
I thought maybe that was an anomaly because most of the scenes that they showed us was actually between Yoon Do-jun and Yoon Park's character. Like they were really pushing the romance there. But
I was actually about to say, in the show itself, they didn't give you much of it. Like, right at the end, they gave you a bit. But that was the best relationship in the show.
Okay.
It was funny. It was, they pushed each other. They challenged each other. They talked a lot. You could see expressions in both of their eyes. Yeah. And it was a really interesting relationship.
So maybe that's why they are the ones who keep on appearing on my Instagram feed.
Whoever runs the account knows which ones are, going to get attention.
The only time I see Kim So-hyun on my Instagram feed is when there's a kissing scene with Yoon Do-jun. I saw one near a doorway. I saw one in a car. So, other spoilers? It's spoil stuff for people.
I mean, it's a rom-com. I'm pretty sure people know there's going to be...
And it's a very formulaic one at that. It's not particularly, compelling or anything. And the compelling parts that there were, they just chucked them out. So what was the point? I'm sorry for people who like the show. Please continue to like it. It just wasn't for me. Okay. So I think I've got the longest list. So I've got a couple that I don't have much to say on. I also watched Sirius, the 4-episode drama special, which was 2013. Oh, that's older than I thought. Okay, so this has a young Park Hyung-shik and also Seo Jun-young, who we actually haven't really seen in anything recently, at least not in anything big. But I remember him from Super Daddy Yo. He was the second lead in that, and he was really good. So it's a pair of twins, identical twins, and of course, they each play the role of both twins.
I remember when this came out, it looked good, but I didn't watch it.
It was good. It was a little bit harrowing. But yeah, there's not much else to say about that, except I enjoyed it. If you want to see a young Park Hyung-shik, just as he's developing that screen presence that he currently has, it's really interesting.
And that case, yeah. The poster seems to have something about angels and fallen angels thing going on. So is there a good brother and a bad brother?
Yeah, kind of. I don't want to give too much away, but one brother ends up in jail while the other one becomes a police officer or detective. And then they encounter each other again when the brother in jail comes out. So it's a story about their relationship, but it is very painful. And very few good things happen.
Okay, so it's good but dark, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So if you like good but dark, try it.
And talking about Park Hyung-shik, you have another drama on your list where he made an appearance.
It's completely coincidental, so we didn't do this on purpose. But High Society, which I think you guys know how into Temperature of Love I was. Yes. I really, really loved that show so much, like you don't understand how much. So because of that, I thought, okay, now I need to check this writer's previous work. And she also wrote High Society and the one that I watched after that, which is Doctors. So High Society is quite typical, but it's interesting. And you've got Park Hyung-shik, who's the second lead in that, Sung-jun, who is the actual lead, and Yui, who is the female lead. But I feel like this drama is a perfect demonstration of how Park Hyung-shik always steals the show. It's like it's the law of his dramas. And
his relationship with the main lead's friend, her name was Ji or something.
That was the second. That was the secondary romance. So his romance was with Im Ji-yeon, I think. And her character's name was Misty.
Yeah. So I found that really cute.
The main couple was Sung-jun and Yui.
Yeah, and they were not cute.
Really adorable. No, they were not. But you know what? They weren't as bad as people made out, because I remember when this was airing, I actually watched an episode when it was airing, and again, I didn't drop it on purpose, I just didn't pick it back up because probably I was watching something else at the time. So I didn't really have anything against it, but also another lesson that I constantly get taught about dramas is that I won't know if something is worth watching until I watch it, because it seems like I always like things that everybody else thinks is rubbish. So everyone thought this was rubbish, but I found it really compelling because it was all about these hard family relationships. And again, maybe it's an Asian thing. Like, we're expected to have certain types of certain quality to our family relationships. Like, we're expected to maintain them. We're expected to have much more sort of filial piety, and like the expectations the family structure places on us is different to Western expectations. And I think that the poor response from the majority of sort of English-speaking viewers is because they didn't relate to that. They didn't get why she couldn't just leave her family, why she had to put up with this, whereas for me it was like every time several times an episode I'd be like, exactly, you understand my life.
Interesting. That's interesting because I didn't finish watching Temperature of Love after we did the first impressions, but I did like the beginning. But I haven't seen either High Society or Doctors, but I really love One Warm Word by this writer.
I'm gonna watch that next.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've had a few I call them adultery dramas. But and I don't generally enjoy those because they're just, I don't know.
This is also what I need
It's
you
one
to
of
tell
my
me.
it's
proper
one of my
adultery and can I
notes.
watch it?
Well,
Yeah.
it is about adultery, but it's about the end of an affair and the aftermath. So like it starts with the end of the affair, and the rest of the drama is about like the emotional and psychological wreckage that these two people have caused in their lives and in their families, and how they deal with that and move on from it. And it's very painful to watch, and it's very smart about the way that human beings relate to each other in their relationships. And so it's not the type of melodrama that you're like, why are you torturing me? It's more like, this is really painful, but it feels really true, and it feels very authentic. And I cried a lot, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Okay, bouncing off High Society though, for Saya, I really wanted to watch Father Strange simply because of the family dynamics. I mean, we already discussed this, and there is a podcast episode that's going to be released at some point next month. But it just, Saya, you need to watch this. I promise you, you're going to love it to bits. So
sorry, watch what?
Father Strange.
Oh, right. Do you know what? I was watching Doctors thinking, if this is what you call slice of life, then... and Father Strange is like this, and I'm rooting for every single relationship, in like every single character in this show, then maybe I need to watch that show. But then I thought, 52 episodes? I don't think so.
You won't even notice. Yeah, says the girl who just watched like 5 16-episode dramas in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but do you know, well, not 5. Like 2 days ago, I was watching Doctors, and for no reason I was watching it until 3 a.m. And I was just like, oh my god, I need to go to sleep. Please, stop making me click the next one. So yeah, I think that marathons and binges are extremely bad for me. Usually I'm like totally fine with rationing myself. I think I was extra tired that day, so it was harder to turn off. But like in the actual experience of watching it, I'm so involved. Like I know I'm a bit of a weirdo, but like the more I enjoy something, the more involved I am in the experience of watching. Like I'm taking notes and I'm writing and I'm screen capping, and then it becomes a kind of I can't casually watch this. I need to be, at my computer in my room and I can't even usually I eat and watch dramas sometimes, which is, I know, a very bad habit, but I can't.
Oh, I do that too. Yeah, I eat and watch dramas.
So how did you finally watch Doctors after me telling you for 2 years? So
do you know what I realized? Also, it's not that I don't take your recommendations, it's that what I actually watch kind of runs independent of pretty much everything. I don't even know how I land on one thing or another sometimes. So I have to say, I have to give credit to Temperature of Love, and also I'm really impressionable when it comes to if everyone is saying, oh, this is bad, then I'll be inclined to think, oh, well, everyone said this is bad, so I'm not going to watch it. And it isn't that I didn't quite think that about Doctors, but I'd heard that, so it was on my mind. And I was like, do I really want to watch it, was the question I was asking myself. And then, there are always more dramas that are sort of closer to the top of the list. Although that said, Pete, I've watched more things that you've recommended than from anybody else. And you actually told me at the time, because you recapped an episode of it, isn't it? And you told me at the time that it's not plot heavy, but you'll really love the romance. And I was like, but will I though? I'm such a doubting Thomas. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible friend.
But also, people were talking about how the romance was creepy and they hated it. I remember when it was airing, and I was like, oh, okay.
It didn't work for so many people.
I do think it's a Western thing, though. Again, because I've been thinking about this quite a lot. The basic, where the story starts is that, he starts off as her teacher, and she's a student. So, of course, there's an automatic sort of ick factor, just based on numbers and on situation. But I think there are so many more factors there that you need to count without baby bathwater thing. There's more here than that. It wasn't that they had a relationship in school. Before he was her teacher, the very first thing he was the guy who caught her shoplifting. So that's what he was at the very first time she met him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he turned out to be the guy living with her grandma, calling her grandma grandma. So then he's kind of an oppa figure. So he's those two things long before he's her teacher. And that informs the relationship in a really different way. Like,
And also, like, it's one thing.
Isn't
I don't know.
based on that.
Sorry, were they? Did
No,
they
go
have
ahead.
a relationship while she was his student, though?
No.
No. That's
like,
not
if
at all
they
what-
didn't, then why?
Interestingly,
And the other thing is, when they meet again in the future, she's actually in her 30s. So
Yeah.
it's not even like she's not sort of an unstable and unsure and
young girl, yeah, where the constant isn't exactly very secure, yeah.
like she was actually so different because she was in her 30s. It changed everything.
The
ahead.
thing that I'm sorry, I'm just one minute. The thing that bothered a lot of people, and I sort of understand it, is that once it was established that Hong Ji-hong was her school teacher, there was this power differential, and it was fine. Like he was protective towards her. He was very much like an older brother. It's not like he was creepy in any way whatsoever. It's only our foreknowledge that he was eventually going to be her love interest that made it creepy. And when the time break came, like the whole time skip, an incident happens and these two separate and then they meet later. When that is happening and these two are separating, this guy, Hong Ji-hong, realizes that he had feelings for her. And she's left. She's left at that moment. But you know, she's still 18 and he's still in his late 20s. So
he's 27 at that point.
Yeah, 27. So, you know, like from that perspective, he's a teacher who's had feelings for his student. He just never realized it until she had left. But
right, that's actually what I was going to mention, is that if you were going to say it, then you would pick that moment and say he did have feelings for her. But also, like you said, he realized it in that actual moment of her turning her back on him and leaving.
Yeah.
That's the moment he realized it, and then he didn't see her for the next 13 years.
The thing that didn't make it creepy for me was because they were always so respectful of each other's boundaries. Even when they reunite years later and Hong Ji-hong is clearly interested, he never pushes her into dating or a relationship. It's just, and she has her own issues, and she has her own. She's actually pretty naive about relationships, right? She's never had one.
She's never had one, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't
And
actually like that.
He, really.
Well, yeah, he stayed.
But she was mature. Even if she hadn't had a relationship, she was mature. Like, I don't think you need to have been in a relationship to gain maturity. She might not have had relationship maturity, but she had sort of human maturity.
Yeah.
Which helped make her relationship ready very quickly.
But the idea behind Hong Ji-hong not having a relationship was essentially that he held on to his feelings for her, even though he didn't see her for the next, 10, 12 years. And,
oh my gosh, I want to watch this now, so don't.
Okay, sorry. Okay, no spoilers. No more spoilers.
Okay, so let's move on.
Okay.
I think we're moving on to airing dramas now. So 2 that have just started. You go first, Anisa, with Shall We Kiss First?
Okay, so I was planning to at least watch the first 2 episodes, the first 2 hours. This is one of those that's broken up into little half-hour episodes. I only had time to watch episodes 1 and 2, so 1 hour. But I really liked it. It's about...
You kind of didn't get anything from anything.
Yeah, so it stars Kim Sana of My Name is Kim Samsoon fame and all that, and Kam Woo-sung, who is I really loved him in Alone in Love. He also was in Spring Days a couple of years ago. He's like such an ajushi, but in like a good way. He's got that like grumpy but charming kind of, I think he's supposed to be like almost 50 and she's in her 40s. So it's like two older people they're both divorced. And she's a stewardess, who's like in severe debt. She has the woman that her husband cheated on her with is also her superior at work, and she's younger than her too. So she's kind of making her life miserable, and she's like, owes, I don't know how much money, thousands of dollars. Her dad just passed away. So like, she's very lonely. She lives on her own, and she's kind of like, her thing is just like, life is too long, but I can't stop living. So what am I going to do? I just have to keep living. And then he is also divorced. They don't really tell you too much, but I think his wife also cheated on him. He's alone. He's just like a misanthrope. He doesn't like people. All he has is his dog, but the dog is also kind of sick, and is probably going to die soon. And they live. Yeah, it's sad.
I had a feeling you would be the saddest about that. She's not going to watch a show that has a dead dog.
Oh.
A dying dog? I'm not watching this. I'm sorry. I've already said that.
I mean, they have sad lives. Okay, they have very sad lives, but they have mutual friends who are married to each other. I think both of them's best friends are married to each other. And so, and they also she lives in 401 and he lives in 501. Or maybe, I think he lives above her. And so, like, the first time they meet, it's because she's knocking on his door because his bathroom is leaking and it's dripping into her bathroom. And she's like, get out. And he kind of ignores her because he just found out that his dog is dying. And then he goes to take a shower, but then he gets trapped in the bathroom. So then he's like trying to get her attention from the floor. So he's like knocking on the floor of his bathroom, and she's underneath. She's like, what is this pervert trying to get my attention when I'm in the bathroom? So she ignores him. And she keeps calling the security agent. She'd be like, why aren't you getting in touch with this guy? I need to, like, my bathroom. I have like 3 buckets in my bathroom. They're full of water. Like, what is this perverted jerk doing? So like 2 days later, his best friend gets worried and like breaks open the door. And meanwhile, he's like having nightmares of being one of those guys that like ends up, found dead in his apartment because he's single and divorced and he has no friends. He's like shivering in his bathtub. Yeah. They take him to the hospital in an ambulance, and she sees him being taken away, and the security guard is like, yeah, he was locked in there, and he was trying to get out, and she, like, remembers hearing him knocking, and she's like, oh my god, and the security guard's like, I hope he didn't die. She's like, oh god. So, and then, even after all that, like, her best friend has been trying to set her up on these dates, because she's like, just find another guy, you can just have a companion for the rest of her life. She's like, I'm too old for romance, whatever. And then she finally agrees to go on this date, and it's him. But he shows up in like this ridiculous getup, and their date goes completely disastrously. And then right at the end of this first like hour long, I guess it plays like one episode, you see this flashback to the first time they met 6 years ago. And I won't spoil what that encounter was, but one of them remembers it and the other one doesn't. And you see what that interaction was. And it was like an important time in both their lives and a difficult time in both their lives. And then it just ends there. And so like, I'm really excited to see what happens next.
Oh, that actually sounds good, barring the dying dog thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That was like, but yeah, just the directing is good. It's funny, but it's not like a slapstick funny. It's humorous. The dialogue is very humorous. The characters feel like real people. The acting is really good across the board. Not the ex-wife. She's the ex-wife. The new wife of her ex-husband is played by Park Hyung-shik, and she's like deliciously hateable. She's really good as a villain. She's always good as a villain. And it's like she's like the other woman, but their relationship is very antagonistic, but also kind of hilarious. So I like that as well. Oh, her ex-husband is played by Oh Ji-ho, and he's just like the most hapless and pathetic man. And yeah. He's just useless. He's just a useless man that I don't understand why either one of them wanted him. But
he's the Oh My Gumby guy, right?
So yes.
He was the dad in Oh My Gumby. I think Parma's seen that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I haven't seen anything of his, I think, interestingly.
He's not a good doctor. He's not a good actor, but he's fine. Like he's
hot, so I think he kind of is.
He's like one of those
Boroma's bar is very low.
My bar is way too low, guys.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not one of the main characters, but he fulfills his role fine.
Although, so as not to cast aspersions upon P's character, her bar is not actually that low. She has a pretty a demanding bar.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's in that sad place where I want him to be hunky and have a decent conversation. So yeah, it's that these two seem to be like circles that don't exactly meet in the Venn diagram.
So basically, your expectations are so high that you'll never find anyone. One other thing about the Should We Kiss First, like you can probably tell from the title, but from what I've seen, like they haven't gone to that yet, but I have a feeling this is going to be one of those where like the physical relationship starts first before the emotional relationship starts. I'm getting those vibes from the premiere, yeah. So just FYI for our listeners, just so you know what you're getting into. Yeah, exactly. Be excited or be warned. I don't know what to tell you, but that's putting that out there. Okay, The Great Seducer. Speaking of giggling, go ahead.
The hot item in Ramaland, I guess, right now is Udohan, and I haven't seen him in anything yet. So you go into this thinking, is he being overhyped and stuff? Have you guys seen Gossip Girl? Any of it?
Yeah.
No, not much.
Well, basically, Gossip Girl is kind of the last thing that I would ever watch, and somehow I ended up watching it. I think I was just like between shows, and I was looking for something.
And this is what you landed up on?
And there was nothing. So I was like, I honestly do not know how I got started on that, because like I really hate sort of scandally type of stuff, and basically Gossip Girl sums up everything I don't like.
Right, which is why I didn't watch it, because of the title. I was like, oh, okay.
And similarly, like, with The Great Seducer, again, it sums up all sorts of things I really dislike. Like, it's not my type of drama. But I don't know, man. There's something very magnetic, and it's like it's oozing with dangerous charisma, and there's like it has this toxic undertone, and it's kind of thrilling. Like it's like a thriller of I don't know. What is the premise? I'm really rubbish at this. Hold on.
Is this the one that's a remake of Cruel Intentions?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh, sorry, I had no interest in watching it.
Right. So the girl, I have it. Oh, Mungeyoung. So the character is called Suji. So Suji 6, Shion, who is Udohan, she like sets him. It's kind of setting up this storyline of her setting him up to date a girl that she wants to get revenge on because she was dumped by this other guy, and the new girl, as in Joy, is her ex's sort of first love interest. They're not actually together, but he appears to have a crush on her.
Okay.
So she's like out to destroy anyone who has made her unhappy. And the thing is, she's not hateful. She's quite not quite sympathetic, but sympathetic, if you know what I mean. Like you get her, even if you don't agree with her. And all of the characters are like that. So in the way, like, for example, with Gossip Girl, as interesting and makjangi as it was, you weren't always emotionally invested in the characters. I think I was only really, in the end, I was only emotionally invested in, like, Blair and Chuck. But I only watched to, like, the second season, so I don't know.
No, that's true for the entire show. Blair and Chuck are the only interesting ones.
Yeah. Kim Min-jae, who plays the third friend, so they're three friends, two guys and a girl. And the third friend is Kim Min-jae, right? And he's like total, like, got all of these Chuck Bass stylings, so you're like, you are very Chuck Bass. What's happening here? But like these character archetypes feel familiar as well. Like if Heirs was like a Gossip Girl extra super light, this is sort of, it's up to the intensity of the emotions. Like there are higher stakes, things feel more dangerous, and
interesting.
it's addictive while not necessarily being nutritional. I don't know if that makes sense.
So have either of you seen the movie Cruel Intentions?
Yeah. Both.
It does not
The
sound
second
like
one
my
was-
kind of thing.
Yeah, I watched it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Like a few years back, like when it was coming on TV. So I know what you mean about it being a little more dangerous and like it's soapy, right? Is it a little bit
Yeah,
soapy?
I think that's probably it. And then watching this, I was like, I understand the appeal of makjang. Because you're like, this is crazy, but I want to know what's happening, where they're going to take this and what's going to happen next. And you're kind of invested in the outcomes in terms of like intellectually invested, if not emotionally. But again, I think the great quality of K-dramas is that they get you emotionally invested really quickly as well. And that conversation ran a little longer than expected, so we figured this was a good place to call a break. In the next part, we take a foray out of K-drama land to talk about Chinese dramas, and we'll also be introducing a new segment, which we really hope you guys will get involved in too. You can leave a comment on our YouTube page, contact us via Twitter at a K-drama podcast, or email us at starsinowrpocket@gmail.com. For those of you listening via iTunes, we'd especially appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review, since that helps people find us. Don't forget, you can also subscribe via RSS, YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and now Google Play. Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay tuned. We'll see you in part 2.